Oh, hi there, and welcome to my 10.1.7 Elemental Shaman Guide. Storm, earth, and fire, heed my call. Now let's get into it. There's that you want to look for on an Elemental Shaman. It's actually straightforward. You want to get as much main stat as possible, as always, and then you want to focus on crit and haste. The reason we want crit is because Elemental Shamans actually gain a 50% increase to our critical damage. So rather than doing 200% increased damage, we will do 250% increased damage. The reason we want haste is because we're a caster, of course. Casting spells more often means we do more damage. It's the basic principle of ABC, always be casting. Now, currently I'm very high on Mastery. Mastery is not very good in Season 2. Roughly you want Mastery and Versatility to be roughly equal. However, doing higher M+ keys and higher end rating, Versatility gains a lot of benefit. But primarily you will be looking to get Critical Strike and Haste. Now let's go over the talents. In the class talent tree, there isn't a lot of damage nodes that we actually care about. Most of our class tree is actually about our survivability, mobility, and our utility. The throughput damage nodes that we will be picking up will of course be Chain Lightning, Lava Burst. We will start with those. You will pick up Fresh Shock due to a core synergy with the rest of your damage kit. You will pick up Fire and Ice for a slight increase in Fire and Frost damage. And we will pick up Nature's Fury for some additional crit chance on our nature spells. Lastly, we pick up Nature's Swiftness, which can be used to do a instant cast while we are moving in case we need it. Elemental Shamans don't have a huge issue with moving, but we will get into that with the utility and defensive layers, as we will right now. Defensively, despite there being a lot of different defensive options, Shamans in general are very squishy. That's something you need to play around. On paper, we technically have two defensive cooldowns. We have Earth Elemental, which increases our maximum health, but it's on a 5-minute cooldown. So that's roughly 1 or maybe twice per fight, but it can definitely be helpful in certain situations. Other than that, we will pick up Astral Shift as our main defensive. For the majority of content, you will probably use the reduced cooldown. However, if you really need it, you can go for a additional effectiveness of your Astral Shift. We also pick up Nature's Guardian. When we fall below 35% HP, we instantly heal for a bit. It's not the best, but it's at least something. We also pick up Brimming with Life. We get 8% increased max HP, and while we're at full HP, our Reincarnation cools down 75% faster. Reincarnation is basically just a free battle res that we have as a shaman. If you decide to pick it up, you can also go into Spirit Wolf and gain this damage reduction. However, do note that it takes 4 seconds to reach the max amount of damage reduction, so you need to pre-plan when to go into Spirit Wolf and start stacking up this damage reduction. You also pick up Elemental Warding, which is just a flat 4% magic damage reduction. And the last minor defensive note we have is Ancestral Defense, increasing our leech by 2% and reducing our damage taken from area of effects attacks by 2%. Utility-wise, shamans are great. That's basically the reason why you pick a shaman. Because you have a solution to every problem in every situation. You have probably the strongest interrupt in the game, since it's a short duration ranged interrupt. You also have an AoE stun. You can slow with Fresh Shock. You can remove magic effects from enemies that buffs them. You get a Windrush Totem, which is just a huge movement speed boost to your entire raid group, or dungeon group for that matter. You get Cleanse Spirit, so you can remove curse effects from friendly targets. You can plop down a Healing Stream Totem. You also pick up is Ancestral Guidance. Even though our off healing has been reduced heavily this patch, it's still worth taking. You can even pick up a Knockback. You can upgrade it into being a Knock Up rather than a Knock Back and reduce the cooldown. You can get a single target stun. You can get Poison Cleansing Totem for Afflicted. You can pick up Hex. You can pick up some proper healing. Basically, the world is your oyster as a shaman. You have so many different utility options that can help you out tremendously depending on the situation you're in. Now, our mobility as an elemental shaman is actually very, very strong. Firstly, we have Ghost Wolf, or Spirit Wolf in this case. Ghost Wolf naturally gives us 40% movement speed. This will then increase to 60% after 4 seconds in Ghost Wolf. You also pick up Spirit Walker's Grace, which is probably the most amazing ability in this game. basically it just allows you to cast while moving, and with Graceful Spirit you also gain 20% movement speed while you're moving and casting. This means that moving during a raid encounter doesn't hamper your damage at all. The final movement option you have access to is either Spirit Walk, which is a short cooldown, big burst movement speed, or Gust of Wind, which is basically a disengage, except it's forward rather than backwards. It is wonderful. I love Gust of Wind for the sole purpose that if I need Spirit Walker's Grace for like 8 seconds, I can get there in 10 by using Spirit Walker's Grace, but I can cast while I'm moving. Spirit Walk does not allow that. And if I need to run a long distance, I will go into Ghost Wolf. So Gust of Wind is perfect for those situations where you just need to move a little bit in one direction. So just point in that direction and use it. It's simple, effective, and it works. But you can pick whatever you feel most comfortable with. Pretty much everything in the spec tree is a throughput node. There is one exception, or technically two, but I would still argue the second one is a throughput node, but that's Primordial Fury, so that our healing crits heal for 250% rather than the usual 200. Or if you want to, you can go Flame Shock, reduce the mana cost of your next heal and increase its effectiveness. And then you have this talent, which basically makes it so whenever we, like if we do anything utility-wise in combat, we gain resources from it, which is again a throughput node. Currently there are a few different ways you can build your Elemental Shaman. If you have the 4-piece tier set from Aberrus, you will most likely always be playing the lightning build, simply because it synergizes and it's honestly quite simple once you get into the flow of the spec. However, there are some synergies that you need to understand before you can actually fully implement playing the lightning build. The nodes you always want to make sure you have in the lightning build is of course Stormkeeper, Electrified Shocks, Surge of Power, Master of the Elements, Elemental Equilibrium, Elemental Blast, and Lightning Rod. There are overall a lot of synergies that we will have to look through in order to fully understand how it all works together. But for the purpose of this video, I will explain the lightning build, which is the simplest and most effective overall once you have your tier set. Before you have your tier sets, there are some different builds you can utilize on like 0 tier, 2 tier, and 4-piece. And the good thing about the single target lightning build is that you can actually go very quickly from a single target focus to just gaining a whole bunch of cleave. For going for cleave, you simply just move the points from Elemental Equilibrium to Echoes of Great Sundering. This makes it so that we use Earthquake in our single target rotation, and it helps tremendously with if there are any adds or secondary targets throughout the encounter. Now, if you want to go for a full lightning AoE, we're just going into Echoes of Great Sundering regardless, and we also go into Flash of Lightning and pick up Echo of the Elements to gain an additional lava burst charge, rather than going down to Magma Chamber and Windspeaker's Lava Resurgence. But yeah, it's actually really simple, and all 3 playstyles are pretty much the exact same. There are some nuances, but we'll go into them when we get to the rotation part. So let's talk about the core synergies that you need to understand in order to actually play the lightning build. So there are 4 things you need to consider when playing this build. You need to consider Electrified Shocks. This just makes it so that when Ice Fury empowers our Frost Shocks, they also make it so that our targets take 15% increased nature damage. This is incredibly potent because this counts for Elemental Blast as well as our lightning bolts. The next one is Master of the Elements. Master of the Elements makes it so that we always try to cast our Lava Burst before we cast Elemental Blast. And that's simply because this is our hardest hitting ability, and the Lava Burst increasing the damage of our next nature, physical, or frost spell will just increase Elemental Blast damage by quite a substantial amount. Now the third thing is Surge of Power. There's a lot of different things you can do with Surge of Power, but for lightning builds specifically in single target, you will always use Surge of Power on Lightning Bolt. If you try to remember that and try to be as consistent with it as possible, you will see a tremendous increase in your single target performance. Even in AoE, it will often be more valuable to get the Lightning Bolt with Surge of Power rather than the Chain Lightning with Surge of Power, because overall the Elemental Overloads, which is our mastery, will grant us more resources that we can then funnel into more AoE damage. And the Chain Lightning one will only ever have an effect if you're fighting 6 or more targets. So just remember that if there are more than 6 targets, okay, Surge of Power, now I use Chain Lightning. Now the last thing you could consider when playing around with the spec is Power of the Maelstrom. I don't personally play around it as much as I should be. For the majority of my playtime, it's just been happening naturally. Those are your 4 mechanics that you need to fully understand. I would say arguably Electrified Shock, Surge of Power, and Master of the Elements are the most important things you need to understand as an elemental shaman. Pretty much everything else will come naturally if you follow that priority. Let me explain in the simplest way I can how all of these synergies function together, right? Basically, you want to Ice Fury, Flame Shock, then you want to Frost Shock, Lava Burst, and then normally you would go Elemental Blast here, but since we don't have the resources for it, we'll just go with a Storm Power or Lightning Bolt. So let me just try this again. Now we have everything. We will go Lava Burst into an Elemental Blast into a Lightning Bolt. Now if I did that faster, I would have gotten the entire Lightning Bolt into the Electrified Shock's window, and that's where you will see most of your damage actually coming from, like all of these things funneling into each other. But that's actually like the base and the core concept of Elemental at the minute. Frost Shock, Empowered, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt. Now you can go Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, and a regular Lightning Bolt. Then you reapply. Flame Shock, go Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt. Frost Shock, Lava Burst. Now we don't have enough for Elemental Blast, so we go Lightning Bolt. And now everything is back up because Ice Fury has come off cooldown, so we can go into a new rotation. And that's basically how you want to do it. Now, currently for the Lightning build, there are 2 potential openers you can do. You can do what is known as a gambling opener, or you can go for what I prefer, which is the consistent opener, because consistency is king. I will not be using Bloodlust for this particular example, but normally on pull you would have Bloodlust up as well, so this would flow a lot nicer, and I wouldn't have to cut out as much. But about 3 seconds before pull, you go Storm Elemental. 1.5 seconds, you go Ice Fury, Flame Shock, Frost Shock, Lightning Bolt, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Stormkeeper, Lightning Bolt, Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt. And then we go back into our standard rotation of making sure we get Frost Shocks up and get our Elemental Blast going and our Lightning Bolts. And now we're actually just completely back to square one. Now something you could do is you could use Nature Swiftness on your Elemental Blast to make it instant cast, which can be quite handy in certain situations, but I wouldn't say it's gonna make it or break it. But yeah, that's your single target rotation and opener. Now for your AoE build, you will be picking up Echoes of Great Sundering, and this is also true for the Cleave version of the single target build, where we will be using Elemental Blast and then Earthquake and then Elemental Blast, Earthquake. So we will just be alternating those 2 as our spenders. Unfortunately, in the Shaman class hall, there isn't really a great spot to show off the AoE, so I will just go through the rotation so that you have an idea of what you should be focusing on. Even though I use Chain Lightning in a single target, you would never do that as an Elemental Shaman, but please bear with me. So the idea is actually quite simple. You want to use Storm Elemental and your Stormkeeper pretty much on cooldown. I'm just gonna quickly build up some resources here. Now on 4 less targets, you will have prioritize your Ice Fury and your Frost Shocks so that you can get your Elemental Blast out. Now we can use our Great Sundering, reapply all of this. And it's a lot of the same actually. You want to use Chain Lightning if you have your Stormkeeper active, if you have the Power of the Maelstrom, which was to make our 2 next Chain Lightnings do our mastery once more, which can be very nice, or on 6 and more targets if you have Surge of Power. Outside of that, if there are 3 targets, you will be using Lava Burst, and then you will be using your Chain Lightning whenever you need to. And that's basically it. If you have to move, use your Flame Shock and your Frost Shock while moving so that you are not hampered if you do not have your Spirit Walker's Grace up. And that's actually it. It's extremely simple once you get into it. It's just following the same logic as your single target rotation, where you want to do Lava Burst and then your either Earthquake or your Elemental Blast, and then Surge of Power, either Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning if there are enough targets. keep up Flame Shock, and do your single target and swapping between Elemental Blast and Earthquake. It's all about breaking things down into its smallest component. But yeah, that's about it I have for you for this guide at least. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Subscribe, and as always, bye!